to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is Debbie G of Spirituality Gone Wild. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And we are indeed so happy you decided to join us today. Unfortunately, Debbie G is actually on location in Colorado. She is tending to a rather major conference going on there. And our friend Neo is off. He's got something he's doing too. He's going to try to send a friend our way that he's recommending to us. But that's okay, because Debbie has sent us some absolutely high-powered guests. I'm going to bring them into better focus for those of you who are watching on the live stream or watching the recording. We have Jolie Dawn and Jules Schroeder joining us. And these ladies, I got to tell you, these ladies have some serious cred. So let me just give you a little idea of who they are. Jolie is the creator of the largest online women's prosperity meditation gathering called the Dare to Prosper Challenge, and was named by Pacific Magazine as one of San Diego's top 30 under 30 entrepreneurs. Jolie is an intuitive business coach and writer. She currently contributes to Entrepreneur Magazine, and her 6 Amazon best-selling books have reached thousands. She is also the founder of Prosperity Queendom Incorporated, an online business training platform for spiritual entrepreneurs. But now to be done by Jolie, we also have Jules. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Ranked by Inc. magazine as #1 of the top 27 female entrepreneurs changing the world and one of the top 40 millennials to follow, Jules Schroeder is a musician and visionary on a mission to inspire people to create a life by their own design. With this vision, Jules created Unconventional Life, a Forbes column and top-ranked podcast for entrepreneurs that features the stories of millennials living from this new paradigm. Unconventional Life has reached millions of people from over 75 different countries and has become a global community of like-minded entrepreneurs, influencers, creatives, and thought leaders. Jules herself has always been multi-passionate as an avid CrossFitter, yoga teacher, musician and singer, writer, and overall life enthusiast. So ladies, I gotta tell you, you are brightening the horizons of LOA Today by joining us today. Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And I got to go to Jules first, because as I found out before the show and as listeners heard here, she's a musician, and I have a special affinity for musicians. You got to tell us a little bit about your musical background before we do anything else.
Yeah, so I've always had a unique gift with music to be able in the moment to create full songs, full, channeled pieces. I remember one time I was at the General Assembly floor at the United Nations, and the artist that was gonna come there, I was there for a business thing, and they were like, I know we need to find a performer. And I was like, oh, I'm a musician as well. And I did a full improv set. I was like, we'll start this thing in the key of A minor, not knowing what was going to come out of my mouth. Talk about co-creating with the delegates, right? Everyone's, sovereign and serious. And it was incredible, 20 minutes and just allowing, full songs, choruses, refrains, all of it to come through in the moment. So it's always been a unique gift of mine. And I definitely have this bit of blues, roots, folk kind of sound. I call it a mix between Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, and Adele. And wow. I love using music as a shortcut to the soul. So
that's very cool too. And that's not an easy thing to do, what you did there, when you were just letting it flow. I mean, you weren't doing any pre-planning or anything. You just, whatever came is what you went with, which is a great skill to have, but it takes a little developing, doesn't it?
It does. And it's a commitment to present moment experience. Cause it's like, if I am not present, that thing does not work.
That's right.
So being in that present moment practice, I think it's the nature of all this stuff, especially the nature of your show. It's like, how do we stay in that zone and allow spirit to move in many different ways? So
absolutely. And then Jolie, of course, with your background with entrepreneur, I mean, I got to tell you, when I saw that cred, that's something I've been reading that magazine for 40 years. And I was just blown away when I saw that one. So tell me, how did that happen? How did you get started there at such a young age too? I mean, we'll do that part second, just the first part. How did you get there?
I've always loved writing, and being a young entrepreneur in my early 20s, I wanted to write somewhere that would already have readership. And so I just went for it. I applied as a writer, and I had a lot of compelling articles already written. I kind of already embodied myself as a writer for Entrepreneur when I applied, and I got the position.
That's exciting. Yeah. Now, I imagine that you couldn't have done that without getting yourself mentally in the right space when you were applying. Because if you went
That's
at that
right.
with like, oh, I'm not going to get this job, then you wouldn't have. So I'm sure you did some deliberate creation to make that happen.
Yeah, and my position was volunteer. I just was as a writer, as a contributor, but I embodied the frequency of a writer who had already done this, who was already writing for Entrepreneur. I claimed it to my friends. And when I got accepted, I was like, yeah, that embodiment, that claiming and that ownership works. It really does.
That's really cool. And then the reason that Debbie G asked you guys to join us on the program, I know she's a little bit heartbroken she can't be here because she's working that conference, is because of a program that you guys are working on together that it's pretty cool stuff. You are reaching out specifically to women and encouraging them to become creators through, what is it, the Dare to Prosper Challenge? Is that what you're calling it?
Yes.
I mean, that's a great deal.
It's so perfect to be on a show like Law of Attraction today, because so much of what we believe is rooted in these natural laws of the universe, that like attracts like. And it's just time. It's time for something new. It's time for a revolution. It's time for women in particular to know that they are key players of the game, of the future, of wealth, of abundance, of recreating big systems. So it starts with self first. It starts with claiming that prosperity, claiming that abundance, claiming that worthiness of having, not just getting by, not just struggling day to day, not just making ends meet, but really thinking big picture into the long game and having a big vision for what you want. And that's the invitation of Dare to Prosper, is to come play with the energetics and learn the energetics of prosperity, because it truly is an energetic first.
I like the fact that you include the word dare in there, because with that word, you are basically pushing women in particular to go beyond the comfort zone, or like, I don't call it the comfort zone. I call it the familiar zone, because it's familiar and we know it and it's safe and it's secure and so forth. But you're saying go way beyond that one, and let's take a challenge on of making this new paradigm part of our lives. I mean, first of all, where did the concept for this particular challenge come from? What was the original impetus behind the whole thing?
It was in 2019 that I just kept having a vision of, because I understand what I do in the psychic field in my work. I understand the way that I play with human psyche and work from human psyche, which is why my programs have had such great success. And I wanted to see how big we could create this field of prosperity and success, and how many women I could impact in a 10-day period. It was really an experiment. And I launched it in 2019 as a beta test. We had our first 500 participants. And it was beyond what I even could have projected what was going to happen. The money miracles in the field that we had opened, I realized that this was very spirit-led. This was very much a co-creation. It was so hugely beyond me. And when I launched the second one in 2020, it was May 2020. We all remember what was happening that time. It was just a few short months after coronavirus was declared a national emergency. We were right at the height of all of the uncertainty, the talks of the recession, all of that. When Jules and I have been connected for many years in entrepreneurship, but she came in and did the Dare to Prosper Challenge. I'll let you share your experience with that.
Yeah, and I was up at my house in Netherlands, surrounded by acres and acres of national forest, full cabin in the woods style, full like COVID bunkhouse, all the things. And I was actually supposed to the month prior be hosting 500 entrepreneurs on a cruise ship through Italy in June. So talk about what sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit. It was like cruise ships, COVID, Italy, and this event that I've been planning for a while was supposed to gross 2 million, was going to be our big income generator in the company that year. Overnight, just that income, a month and a half just disappeared. Yeah. And so in the process of that, I started just to unraveling a lot of that pushing energy. And I think many of us last year, and even we've been in this go pattern. And when the go pattern gets interrupted, the pattern interrupts, it started to look at a lot of internal shifts. And, I was hemorrhaging money left and right. Internally, I was like, what's next? Where, like in that dark night of the soul in some ways. And my roommate found her challenge and was like, this Jolie chick's like doing this Dare to Prosper thing. I was like, oh, I know Jolie from ages ago. I was like, well, I'm not really interested in this internet challenge and I don't really care about prosperity right now. So, I'm kind of just like in my vibe and whatever. And I ended up joining because she was like, well, let's just keep some accountability with me. And I did 8 out of her 10 days. And that next month, it shifted everything. I made $60,000 in my business in the middle of everything that had been going on. But beyond that, my mentality of the limits that I put on what was possible for myself started to shift. And I think this is the big thing, is that we don't even realize subconsciously where we place the limits of what is and isn't possible for prosperity in our life. In the name of wealth creation, in the name of our relationships, just in the names of what we say we can and can't have. And this challenge takes you into relationship with the quantum field, with your subconscious every single day as a practice. And I think for me, I would have identified saying, I don't have limiting beliefs. I'm prosperous. I'm this, I'm that. I mean, maybe not at that moment in time, but overall, I didn't realize what I didn't realize. There's that don't know that you don't know place. And that's the place that this inquiry, this challenge really begins. And flash forward, I invited Jolie to my timeshare a few months later when we could start to travel again. And I was like, let me at least thank you and come to Mexico. And as we got talking, we really stepped in this place of collaboration of what happens, together when we step out of being the big fish in our individual pond and we come to really look at, well, what can we do as two rather than what we can do as one? And I think that's so much of the era that we're in right now is this co-evolutionary field. How do we create transformation at scale? How do we create prosperity at scale? How do we create change at scale for ourselves, for our family, for our work in the world, for our gifts and talents? And I really think this is an era of the co. And the irony is that event really was centered, that cruise ship was centered on this co-evolution. And I don't think it happened in the way that I intended, but I do think that the vision still birthed itself into the world wholly and completely. And so this will be our 3rd year, my first time doing it with Jolie, but really, we hope to have at least 5,000 women joining us. And the invitation is, who do you say you are now? Who do you rebirth yourself are? I know some of you, we've gone through these big deaths. We've gone through these big rebirths. Some of us have 2x, some of us has negative 2x. We've been all over the map this year, but I think there's tremendous opportunity to get to know yourself, know your potential, and know, your gifts and talents in a new way moving forward. So that's really what our vision here with this challenge that begins next week, May 17th through the 28th, and it's totally free to participate in. So,
and we will give this information out a few times throughout the show. But for those who do want to join in on this, want to be part of this challenge, how do they become part of it? Where do they go?
Yeah, so Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
You can head to the daretoprosperchallenge.com, all spelled out.
That's it. Real simple. All right. And we'll give that out a few times. I love what you were talking about, Jules, about how, I don't remember the exact way you phrased it, but you were describing your process for getting past yourself. That's the way I was looking at it. You were getting past your own limitations. You were kind of knocking them out of the way, and you were doing it through the co-creative approach, which you and Jolie have been able to put together and turn into something that was even bigger than what she thought was already massive. And it was. I mean, 500 by the way, that's the best beta challenge I've ever heard. I mean, 500, real good. You deserve a lot of credit for that one. But you guys have taken it to the next level. And I guess the question I'm trying to ask Jules and Jolie as well, but I'll go to Jules first. How did you break through? I mean, was it just the reconnecting with Jolie that made the difference? Or, what, because something had to shift in your mind. Your mindset had to shift in some way. What shifted?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the first step was starting to be in what I call radical relationship to the present moment. And there was a way, and if you had asked me, I would have said, I'm a fairly possible oriented person. I mean, I created this whole company based on, having permission, following your own path. But either way, we're still humans. At the end of the day, we have our own humanity. And I had to take a look at what was the consciousness that I was subscribing into. And I didn't even realize how much fear consciousness in that moment I was choosing for myself, about the world, about the economy, about COVID, about health, about, Black Lives Matter, about racism. I mean, it was just everything at once. And I think that we're in a great awakening right now. And I think many of us, and some of you tuning into this, we've been on the front lines for a while. We've seen it coming. We've been in practice camp. And I think for me, COVID really pushed us out there And it was like, well, are you ready? Are you going to do it? Are you not going to do it? What do you think? And in some senses, there are many moments in that and this that where I'm like, do I really want to be here? Like, there's a lot of crap. Like, am I interested in that? And I think that takes being radically in relationship where, you know, if I'm going to create my life, well, what am I subscribing to? And I think that awareness is the first step to actually start to peel back what has shown up without even looking at it. And it's a continual practice. It's like spring cleaning, you know, the whole thing. It's like, you know, every winter, whatever it is, you accumulate all this stuff and you have to gut it out, because if you don't create that active removal, then all the things that you want in your life have no space to actually land. And I think this is the other main thing for me, is that I was surrounded by tremendous opportunity, but I couldn't actually connect that opportunity that I had because it didn't have enough space. And, you know, Jolie talks about in these meditations about coming to this garden. She uses this garden as a figurative example, but it's like, you got to clean the garden. You got to spring cleaning the closet. And then from that place, I think new things can truly anchor that are there to anchor. So for me, that first shift of what am I subscribing to? Where is my awareness? And then what will I actively remove such that I then have more space for whatever wants to show up, either there already or not.
I think it's so cool that you make that shift. That's probably the big issue that anybody has when we are confronted with the whole concept of what the law of attraction is, how creation works, how our minds play a direct role in the entire process, how our relationships play a direct role in the process, and making that shift. I mean, we can have the theory explained to us all day long, but when we're in the spot, on the spot, so to speak, having to actually face making that shift, that's where so many of us trip up. You made the breakthrough. And Jolie, I get the impression you never even slipped. I mean, maybe you just put up a good persona. I don't know, but I get the impression that you just kind of slid through all of 2020. It didn't even affect you. Am I wrong?
Oh, man. You know, I was in a challenging, my personal life was challenged in 2020. I was in a very challenging personal relationship that ended. But to answer your question around the energetics of this, I'd love to tell a quick story about how this really all came to be for me.
Okay.
It was when I was 20 and going into college and blossoming into the world as a young adult. Sorry about the background noise. I was around during the 2008 economic collapse when all of that housing crisis and all of the economic collapse of 2008 was happening before my eyes. And it hit my family really hard, really hard. My dad's law firm was way over leveraged in credit. There was a bunch of investment properties, and all of like the financial collapse of his world and our family led to his suicide in 2010.
Oh, yeah.
And that trauma around money and trying to process my reality that my favorite person, my parents were married. I grew up with both my parents, but he wasn't a distant creature. He was in my life as a main figure, mentor in my life, and someone who was very active in my life was gone off of the planet because of money, because he couldn't keep up the act. His law firm was really outdated. They exclusively marketed in the yellow pages, and they just couldn't get with the times of the internet. Like, my dad was born in the 40s. He had me very late, much later in life. And I was having to process the reason why my favorite person on the planet no longer exists is because of money. And the reason why this economic collapse happened in this country is because of a few very greedy people. And I just had so much anger and hatred around money and the money system, and it's not fair, and so many beliefs that held me back, believing that money wasn't meant for women. The best thing I could do in my life would be to position myself to marry somebody wealthy, somebody who knew how to generate. All of these beliefs were so real. It was my reality, and I couldn't separate the two between what were my belief systems and what was true reality. And I realized when I became a young entrepreneur that I needed to heal my money beliefs, and I needed to do a lot of work around affirmations. So The Secret was one of the first books I read. Was like, okay, I understand that I am the source and I'm the creator here, and I'm attracting everything that is a exact replica of my belief systems. And so of course I have no money. Of course nobody wants to buy my product. Oh my God, I was on stage at my own event with 150 people in the audience. I had one buyer from my offer, from a girl who felt bad for me, who didn't even actually join the program.
Wow.
That's the position I was in 2012, 2013, starting my business. Then I realized money is an energy and money is a relationship. And like Jules says, I got in powerful relationship with money. And I started looking at what I believed. When I started to heal what I believed and what I believed I was worth and how I believed that I could create in this lifetime, I saw a radical difference on what actually manifested and showed up in my world. And I would show up more powerfully on sales calls and more powerfully on stage, more powerfully in my offer. And that's what I want to make available to people, is that true prosperity is an energy that you absolutely do have control of. And if you're willing and brave to travel into your unconscious mind and meet those beliefs that may be holding you back, you have so much hope for the future, because you get to create it. You get to say what your wealth future is. You get to create your abundance. And we need people right now on the planet who care about big abundance, because we need resources to change the systems that need our attention most right now.
That's true. Yeah. Well, you just put to shame my claim that you sailed through 2020, because you went through in 2008. I went through a very similar thing in 2008. I didn't lose a parent, but I lost a business. I lost an entire business, and it was terrifying, to say the least. So I appreciate that side of it. I also appreciate what you're talking about, the money. I actually wrote a book about how the money supply works. So it was it was a big project for me. It was a big deal for me. But ultimately, like you said, you had to make that shift, and the shift came through the healing. I think that was the word you used, the self-healing. So take a moment, Jolie, and just talk about, what did you do to actually do the healing? I mean, it's one thing to say, I'm going to heal myself. It's another thing to actually do it.
Yes. Okay. First things first. Every single day for 365 days, I made a 1-year commitment to myself, and I did not miss a day. Every single day, I went to my journal and I wrote a letter to money, even if it was a 1-sentence check-in. I started to seduce money like a relationship. I love you so much. Thank you for showing up. I just got free tickets. This is more evidence of how abundant I am. And I tracked and I counted and I celebrated every minute detail of the money that was coming through my life and how I was abundant, because I understood that the more I celebrated it, the more I was creating it. And even when it was hard, I was apologizing. Like, I am so sorry for pretending that taxes didn't matter. I am so sorry for pretending that incorporating my business 3 years late didn't matter. All of these things matter. And I got into just big time accountability with it. And I paid attention to my spending, and I started tracking my business expenses. And I'm just light years beyond the woman I used to be, which was like, this is not something I need to pay attention to. I'm going to put on the blinders. Somebody else will do this for me. My accountant will do it. My money manager will do it. Some team member will do it for me. I just want to have so much money that I don't have to pay attention to money, which never happens. You always need to pay attention to your money. That's a recipe for it falling through the cracks. And so what I did was I started to get into a relationship. I tracked my money. I counted it every time I got paid. I counted that money multiple times. I still do this as a practice. Every single time any money comes through my business, I count it and I track it manually myself. I write it down. I feel the money. And then I started getting, pushing myself to get a little bit uncomfortable, raising my rates, having bigger offers, hiring business coaches, really having a solidified plan in my business so that I could actually work on that piece of revenue.
Wow. Yeah. That's some pretty serious shifting going on there. And that's good stuff. I imagine, Jules, you probably had to go through something similar, but your track, everybody's track is always a little bit different. What was your track like? How'd you do your shifting, your healing?
Yeah. I actually had a near-death experience about 6 years ago. And it was a wakeboarding accident. And, pre that accident, I started my first 6-figure company at 18, 7-figure company at 22, and not 24. I was running a 30-person company. Business partner embezzled $200,000, went into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. I'm like also a sponsored snowboarder, traveling and snowboarding, trying to run this company. It was like a whole thing. And I lost everything. And I was dating my other business partner, the one who didn't embezzle. And in the process of 8 months, I felt like all the things that I thought mattered, gradually, started to decline. And I had to really ask myself. And then flash forward a year later is when I had this near-death experience. And so some ways I feel like I had to go through my external death before I then went through my internal death. And you might hear my dog in the background. She's giving a little growling acknowledgement here. But with that, this accident, it was a wakeboarding accident. I was out, on the water one day and was out with the boys, seeing how much air we could get and try to jump the wake. I've always been a bit of an adventure enthusiast. And so, I jumped and I smashed and I face planted, and I knew something was up. I just didn't know how much. And flash forward an hour later, I got off the boat and I just couldn't, feel my arms, my legs, and they took me to the hospital, and my next memory was coming out of the MRI. And I was approached by this white figure and 6 Black Shadow Council member. And we had this conversation that was, Jules, you have more work to do in the world. Do you want to do it? And at the time, they thought my neck was broken. I thought I might have been paralyzed. And I just remember saying yes, as long as I don't come back as a vegetable. And in that next moment, I was zapped back into my body. I felt this energy forge my neck back together and shoot down my spine. And the moment that I woke up, everything shifted. It was like life before being driven by me, life since coming through. And I remember 3 weeks later, I get a random phone call from this woman who I had met, and she was like, you want to come be a global ambassador at the UN right now for education? And I'm like, in this neck brace, just had this experience. I'm like, is that really the best time? And I hear this voice, and it's like, tell her you have this initiative called Create You to reimagine higher education. And I'm okay, maybe I may be batshit crazy. I've totally lost my mind. And I tell her, and she's like, can you be at the UN in 3 weeks? I'm like, sure. And then Forbes reaches out and they're like, we want you to part of Forbes 30 under 30. And they're like, we want you to start writing for us. I can't even spell. I mean, I have ideas, but then they asked me to start their first podcast, which ended up being Unconventional Life. And so this whole dominoes shifted. But more than all of that, what it took is I felt in that accident, the experience of what it was like to be on the other side. And I relate to that as this frequency of love. And after tasting that as an option on the menu, being in a body in human form, there was a disconnect. Talk about the separation. I was like, wait, why am I skin and bones? Nothing here is going to feel like that. And that has been something that I've really had to reconcile with and ultimately come to appreciate as a gift of actually being the bridge. And I think all of us, we are the bridge. We are the bridge of the two worlds. And it's felt like my mission has been to activate and to really ignite gifts and talents, not only in myself, but in each of us. And I think of these words, you have more work to do, you want to do it often. And I think we're all at a unique place that, sometimes we think that our gifts and talents don't matter, that we don't have enough education or training or opportunity or clarity, or someone else is doing what we want to do. Yet we're in this period that I think that's the whole point. And when I keep coming back to this accident and what showed up, the whole point is understanding that your unique imprint, our unique blueprint, we are uniquely equipped with every piece that we need to bring this work forward, or we wouldn't be here. And I think that has been a lot of the work that we're doing in this Dare to Prosper, is to remember, because I think it's this process of remember, forget. And I think how we do that is we do that in connection, in conversation, because without having these mirrors in my own experience, I don't know if I'd have made it. I don't know, especially after COVID. There are moments where I was like, I am complete. I've done enough podcasts. I've hosted enough events. I have enough music out there. I'm out. God, have we hit that quota yet? Can I go home? But legit, come on, I'm done. And in order to keep going, I'm like, all right, if I'm gonna really stay here, then man, my joy quota has got to increase. My present moment vibrancy has got to increase. Because if this isn't fun, if I'm not in the practice of pleasure, that's the other thing. I had to really unsubscribe from the fact that I thought life just had to be 6 or 7. What is it really like to spend most of my life in a 10 frequency? Not overnight inherited, but a cultivation, consistent cultivation. And so that's been a bit of this process, and I think a bit of the gift, but a bit of why I think we all need each other. Because I think without it, at least for myself, I'm lone wolfing, and frankly, I don't care. It's not enough for me to want to stay. And so we get to dig for what is that activation. And I think that activation is our purpose. And our purpose really comes alive when we tap into these gifts and talents we're born with and we develop.
Very cool stuff, ladies. Both of you, really very cool stuff. I want to come at you with a little bit of a challenge question, because I believe that one of the most difficult concepts that anyone who is becoming familiar with or working with for some time, or in some way trying to develop themselves with the law of attraction, they're having to come face to face with a couple of hard truths. One of those truths is that they created their lives, and the other is that they are capable of creating their lives. And they are both equally daunting. The first, facing up to, yes, okay, I own up everything that came into my life that I don't like, I'm responsible for. And then owning up to, yes, everything that I really want my life to be, I am responsible for. Those are, I mean, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, but they are both really big deals. You guys seem to have just kind of, slammed through them. But, let's be perfectly honest. A lot of people just, they're constantly dealing with the disappointment. They're constantly dealing with the frustration. Like, I can't seem to get there. I can't seem to make the shift. I can't seem. So what do you say to them? Who wants to go first?
I can. Are you on a tag? Yeah.
There's a power that's waiting for you that once you taste it, you'll never turn back. The power that you feel in taking 100% responsibility of the reality of your life is, I don't know of a better way of living. For me, undercover control freak, I like to know that I'm in control to the best of my ability. And the way that I know that I have some say in this reality and can calm my anxious mind is to know that I'm here creating it and I'm at the source. And if I want a multi-6-figure launch, I'm the one that's creating that. And if I want a book deal, I'm the one that's creating that. And if I want to manifest the most epic business partner I could ever possibly imagine, I'm the one that's at source of that. And so it's not waiting for someday, maybe in the future, I might be successful. I know that I am the active creator of my success. I know what my privileges are. I know what my talents are. I know the gifts that I came into in this lifetime. And then I know how to turn on that part of me that creates, that is the creatrix of my life. And so for everybody listening that's wondering how to turn that on, like Walt says here, it's a huge responsibility to take responsibility for everything. But with that comes enormous freedom. And it's something you must be willing to have both sides of the coin for.
Yeah. I think if I was just to echo and add to that, is that, it's a continual choice. And there's been so many moments where I don't want to, I don't like it, it doesn't feel good, it's not what I want. And as Jolie said, and it's all my doing, whether I liked it or didn't, right? It's all mine. And sometimes we only want to take advantage for all the good things we're creating. And then when they're not there, we can blame it. Oh, well, it's just not my fault. Oh, something happened. Oh, this person let me down, this person, that. And they have to expand your spectrum. You're choosing all of it all the time. And for me, actually being willing and brave enough to accept that I'm choosing all the bad along with all the good is the starting point. Because if I don't know that I'm responsible for all the players at the table, then how can I know how to deploy the right team? And so I think we have to understand that we've consistently got team around us, but we keep choosing it. And I think that's been the thing, is there's been so many moments. I don't know if the fear for me ever goes away sometimes, or the self-doubt, or even the courage. I mean, we evolve, right? I feel like I evolved the relationship to it. But at the end of the day, like, there's still that voice. That voice doesn't always stop. But I've just gotten really good at acknowledging her and being like, got you. And I'm doing this. I'm terrified and I'm in action. I feel like this isn't working and I'm moving anyways. And I think if you're in that perpetual practice of momentum and you move, if you feel stuck or stopped or trapped, you just keep playing the game. And I find the only way you lose is you stop playing. And sometimes that takes a pattern interrupt. Einstein's definition of insanity, you're doing the same thing over, expecting a different result. So if you've been hitting that same note every single time, getting that same result, it's a variable change. You got to change a variable. And sometimes that variable is scary to change because we're creatures of comfort, we're creatures of habit, and creatures of stability. But I would say that if you're willing to keep looking at what notes am I playing? Do I need a variable change? And I'm going to play a new variable. It really becomes more objective, then it becomes personal, because it just becomes a data game. It just becomes a taking action, getting data, making a tweak, getting more feedback again and again and again. And I'd say that if you keep playing, you will get the result that you want. You only stop when you stop.
like 99% of the people hearing this show are listening to a recording. We do have some people who listen to the live stream. I just wanted to share one of the comments from Susie. She says, "What a wonderful show. Such beautiful messages from all of you. Feeling energy shifting all over the place. So empowering, so triggering to self-greatness." That's pretty much what you guys are trying to do with the challenge, isn't it? Just to generate that feeling, that expression.
I think Jules and I have something in common, which is life set us up for really early on challenges, really, really early on challenges in our lives. And it made us people of character. So both of us by our early 20s could see what this game of life was and what it wasn't. And both of us did not treat our 20s as a practice round. We both came into this life with a mission that if we weren't living it, at least I can speak for myself, I'd be a miserable person. To be of service and to be of contribution and to take the pain from my upbringing, from my childhood, from having two parents who were addicts, having two parents that were just completely emotionally unavailable, and to be able to learn and see what this game is and enjoy the process while I'm here, to know that this is all so very temporary. And we truly have the opportunity to create anything that we want, as long as we're willing to believe it and conceive that it is possible. And so thank you so much for your sweet comment, because that's really so much of my fulfillment is to pass this on, that life can truly be so amazing. And my definition of success is consistent days of joy and fulfillment. How consistent can you get with being in joy and being in fulfillment? And that's what I practice every single day. It's like, where can I find the joy in this moment, even when it's hard, even when I'm challenged, even when I don't want to?
Yeah. And I'll just add that it's like sometimes if you feel like you've lost your mojo in that, or you feel like you've never had that, or maybe you want to have that for the first time, it's a lot of why we're doing this challenge. I'd say just come join us. Come be in the field. Sometimes we have to be in a new environment. It's why people say, why do we get our best ideas in the shower sometimes? It's just a pattern interruptive environment. And so just come, at least for these 10 days, step into that. And I promise you, at least if nothing else, being in a different state change, a different, place to corner, that's our mission behind it, is that if you haven't had, or you haven't, like I was last year, I lost my mojo at that point. It allows just a way to see things. And so that would be our opportunity and offering for you, if you feel that you've been missing that or are craving more of that.
And of course, that's the place to find out more is the Dare to Challenge, the Dare to Prosper Challenge.com. I got to get the promo right if I'm going to do the promo. This is the Dare to Prosper Challenge.com. So you listen to the second one, not the first one. But Jolie, you made a very interesting point, and as you were making it, I realized just how true it is. The people who latch onto these concepts the easiest and the quickest with the greatest level of success are the ones who go through tremendous challenges early on. I learned that pretty early on with the podcast, partly through my own experience, but also through the experience of one of my first co-hosts, a gentleman named Joel Elston, who did the show with me for about a 4 or 5 year period, something like that, and still comes in every once in a while to sit in. Joel's background was that he grew up in a family where it was a little bit of a dysfunctional family, but the main dysfunctionality was in him because he found himself working for his father's insurance company and hated every minute of it. And on top of that, he was a gambling addict. And so he basically embezzled his father's company, went to Vegas, lost all the money, became homeless, ended up getting arrested, thrown in prison, and came out of it feeling like he had just been through, the grinder. But he also met people who introduced him to the law of attraction and the concepts that were involved in that. And he has turned his life into one of being first a therapist and then a life coach to thousands, literally thousands of people, many of whom had gambling addictions. And that's a particularly significant thing because anyone who's ever been a therapist knows there are very few programs for gambling addicts because gambling addicts don't have any money, so they can't buy therapy. And that's a real big challenge that he actually helped to break through on. He also has worked with kids who were stuck in the foster care system, particularly those who could not get out, who were unadoptable or considered unadoptable because they had behavior issues or they had all kinds of baggage they were carrying along and nobody wanted to adopt them. And he ended up finding forever homes for 43 of these boys over the years. Wow. I mean, he's had this kind of amazing experience, but he points it all back to that day when he got thrown in prison and the door was slammed shut. And the way he describes it is, I would never want to go back and do it again, but it was the most important day of my life, the most valuable day of my life, because first of all, I could finally take a breath. Because up until that point, I had been in absolute terror of being thrown in prison. And then when it finally happened, it wasn't nearly as bad as what I thought it was going to be. And literally that became his turning point. He describes it as a springboard. And so I'm going to take that word and bring it into what you were talking about, Jolie, and what you were talking about, Jules, with your own experiences. Do you feel like your major Dark Night of the Soul events were springboards?
Yeah, I remember at 21, the turning point with my own addictive tendencies with drinking and drugs and alcohol, all of it, when I got really, really sick and had to have a major jaw reconstructive surgery. And I just realized no one was going to come save me. You know, the trauma of my past, my dad's suicide, my mom stayed frozen in a trauma response until she passed 9 years later after my dad.
Boy.
I knew that no one was going to come and say, Jolie, you're over the limit. I was so good at being high functioning and getting everything I needed done, but I was so not happy inside. And when I realized that no one was going to come put me in check that I needed to, that's when I realized that I need to make the change. I need to be the one that saves myself. Nobody can possibly do this for me. And, you know, I know what like agonizing life pain feels like. I know what it feels like to have the walls closing in on you of just like, how could I possibly get myself out of this situation? I know what it feels like to feel so powerless around other people. And, you know, I appreciate conversations like this because we all need a little motivation sometimes. We all need to find light and inspiration inside of other people. And to those of you that are listening, that are finding some truth in this, I really want you to take away from this that so much more available to you than you could possibly conceive. There's so much that life has to offer, and we're here so very temporarily. And understanding and knowing and living one of the great concepts, the law of attraction, has you being able to be that magnetic force field of that which you desire, and you can have it. And so, yeah, the springboard was realizing that I'm the one that's at the driver's seat here. I'm the one creating this. No one can possibly do it for me.
How about you, Jules? Was it a springboard?
I think absolutely. And I think, you know, as well, like there's just this recognition, there's no gap. I think sometimes we live in this, you know, perpetual gap, right? There's where I am and what I feel and what I know in my external reality. And I don't have the money. I don't have the job. I don't have the children. I don't have insert X, Y, and Z. And when we live in that perpetual gap, the gap widens. And in my own experience, you get to where you think that goal is that is going to close the gap, and then another gap's been created and another gap's been created. And so for me, it's just understanding and it's being with that all of the things that I want are already actually right here in this very moment. So every single thing that you desire and you want is actually available to you right now. And to allow yourself to receive the fact that those things are available to you in this very moment consistently allows you to have that experience. And even just the power of intention. You know, I as a musician, I've got this big show tonight. It's our first big show since COVID. And, you know, we've been practicing for weeks and it's this whole thing, right? And I've been doing a lot of like law of attraction work, not on how I want to feel tonight. And that the qualities that I want to feel all in, fully committed. I'm doing my first song in Spanish. I've been like in this big telenovela that I've been listening to, and I wrote a song in Spanish and I'm going to perform in Spanish, and it's a whole other thing. God's like, guide me in Spanish, Espanol. I was like, all right, you know, but the qualities, right? Being all in on myself, being the space of excitement, of joy, being the space of possibility. Like those aren't things that I will get if the audience acts a certain way, if all of the band plays the right notes. Those are things that I get to be right now. And from those qualities, that is what is actually creating those things that I will get to have. And I think that there's part of being able to visualize and give yourself the qualities that you want to recognize that they are here right now. And I think that even if it feels like a small fire, which sometimes in those springboard moments, you might feel like no connection to that flame. But sometimes those springboard moments, when stuff hits the fan, that ignites the flame. And that gets to be where you get to grow and tend to the flame and cultivate the flame because it's already right here. And that's what I think allows that growth and ultimately that reality, that gap to close.
It's funny too, as we're talking about this, I'm kind of reflecting back on where this show was at in terms of many of the conversation points that we were at before COVID. And one of the topics that often came up was, particularly when Joel was doing the show with me, was a lot of people have had these dark night of the soul moments. Others have not. And those who have not, and I can't say I ever really had a dark night of the soul. I've had some, well, dark decades, but other than that, but I can't say there was any particular one time where I just like, I was, suicidal or, taking drugs or whatever like that. And I was just about ready to end it. And so I used to ask myself, well, if I never had one of those, how do I get a springboard? Well, that conversation is now passé because we've just passed through of what was it, 12, 14 months now of a collective dark night of the soul. So that excuse no longer exists. And a lot of people, I think, have come through now, and there are probably a lot of people still kind of, gasping for air above the water, but they may be thinking that, it couldn't get any worse than this. This is actually the best time, isn't it? They've just come through the worst of it. Now's the time for them to spring back up. What better time to join your challenge?
Absolutely. And I think too, sometimes we got to let it all burn so we can clear the noise, clear the clutter, clear what can't come through. And so I think that, that's available to all of us. So
it's an exciting thing too. It's a dare though. And I like the fact that you have the words dare and challenge in there. I mentioned that before the show, and I really do think that's important because we do get comfortable, don't we? We become satisfied with our familiar areas, and we don't really let's be honest, change is uncomfortable. Shifting is uncomfortable. Making these changes in behavior and taking on responsibilities that we didn't take on before is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel easy. It doesn't feel like, oh yeah, okay, I'm just going to have another cup of coffee. It's not that kind of a deal. It's a big, big deal. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Somebody who is, I guess I'm trying to talk to the person who's saying, I'm thinking about going to this challenge. I mean, it sounds good, but I've heard things that sounded good before, and I'm not really sure. And they're basically trying to talk themselves into it while they talk themselves out of it. That's the person I'm trying to reach right now. That's the person I'm talking to. So, but let's talk to that person a bit. What do you have to say to them? What's going to push them over the edge? What do you think, Jolie? What's the one thing you can say to them?
In order to have a different result, we have to do something differently. We have to be someone differently. And I invite you to do something that you maybe have never done before. Like Joel said, I completed 8 out of the 10 daily challenges when I typically would never tune into something like this. And while I've been trying to put this challenge into words and what gets created, and it's so much beyond me and so much beyond the team, it's a collective field. And for somebody who's looking to have a different result, it doesn't matter how many decades you've been in pain, in scarcity, in contraction with your money, and just overall prospering in life, to remember that you always have the power to create something else. And if you're inspired by that and you're curious, come co-create this field with us. It's something that is a new creation every time. The last time we ran it in 2020, we had 1,500 people from over 35 countries. That is a collective field because all of our energy comes together, all of our intention comes together, and there's just magic. $1,000 being found out of nowhere. Somebody got a random multi-6-figure lawsuit that she wasn't expecting, multi-6 figures, job promotions. It's the field where opportunity is attracted to you. You are the magnetic force. And so I invite you to come play in this co-creation. And if you like our vibe, if you've resonated with Jules, you've resonated with me, it's more of this and deeper. And I bring in all of my tools of hypnosis and theta healing and conscious reprogramming so that no matter what you've been through in the past, you will get to see that a new future is possible.
Yeah. And Jolie, I know you said the word curiosity. And, even if I look at myself last year, I was only slightly curious about prosperity at that point. To be fair, I didn't really care, but there was a small flicker. It's like those springboard moments, right? And so if there is even the slightest flicker, I invite you to follow that curiosity thread. Show up. Just even registering might be a breakthrough in itself, even if you attend one session. I mean, for me, I made it 8 out of 10. That was like 100%. Like that was a big deal for me. Some people might be like, well, you didn't do the whole thing. I don't care. That was my version of it. And so do it your way. And I think that if you give yourself the permission to follow your curiosity in anything in life, that always opens more things. It opens the secret menu. There's what you think's going to happen, and then there's what ends up happening, as a byproduct of it. And so I'd say give yourself that gift and show up as you are. There's no need to be anywhere other than the way you are. Meet yourself newly each day. And maybe that first action is pausing this thing or watching this thing, open up that new browser, the daretoprosperchallenge.com, entering your name, entering your email, and being like, boom, breakthrough. And then from there, see what shows up. So.
That's good. I like that. What when you are talking with somebody who is on that edge, and you've been doing it right now, you're trying to help them find that excitement level. I would think that you mentioned 500 in the beta test, 1,500 with the last event. I think I saw that you currently already have 900 signed up for this one. I'm not even sure what the current count is. But when you get that many people connected together, I think I kind of want to touch on, you feel that, don't you? Not just you, the organizers, but everybody who comes in, there is an energy there that is tangible and that you feel and that actually impacts your life, isn't there? Regardless of what you're learning, just that energy level.
Absolutely. I've been feeling it for weeks as the number count rises. We're over 1,400 now for this round.
1,400. Okay.
Yeah, and we keep enrollment open all through week 1 of the challenge. And I can totally feel it. I can feel that it's different. It's different every single time. And the particular energy that I feel in this group at this time in history is an absolute sheer commitment. So committed that this is the moment where I turn this around. This is the moment where I create a new reality. There's just like, the stakes are higher. The stakes are higher, and we've come off something so important in our evolution that we realize that there really is nothing to lose. We've just seen so many systems shake and break down. And at this point in history, it's like the stakes are high to the point where there is no turning back, and that commitment is all in.
How does the energy come across from your perspective, Jules? And what do you think it feels like for somebody who is a nobody, just kind of poking their nose in for the first time? What do you think they're going to feel if they're at all open to what that energy feels like?
It's contagious. It's electric. It's like when you why watch a movie? Why listen to a beautiful song? It gives you a feeling. And that feeling creates a state change. And I think whether you're even the slightest bit open, being able to do that at scale, yeah, Kathy, even being able to do that at scale, that creates something new. And I would say if you've never put yourself in that, we're expecting around 5,000, women and men. Men are invited. The conversation's geared towards women, of course, to be here. And when you do that, the power of collective intention, like that is cool. It's not even like you're holding it or I'm holding it or there's a few of us holding it. There's like a 5,000 watt amplifier pushing that thing through. So if there's something that you've been like, historically, this thing ain't moving, bring that thing. Because that thing is what gets worked through, because that's when you have that power of collective intention. And so I think this gets to be a vortex and bring all the stuckness, bring those things that you are so clear don't work or don't work the way you want them to. The things you're so clear will never change. Bring them, all those things, because that's what gets to be worked out in community and with collective amplification and intention.
I got to ask you, why 10 days? That doesn't sound, I mean, that I could easily see that being a number you just kind of picked out of the air, but I don't get the feeling that was picked out of the air. I get the feeling that was very intentional. Why 10?
So it's essentially over 2 weeks. Week 1 is 5 days. We integrate for the weekend. We come back for week 2 and do another 5 days. And there's actually another integration period week post the challenge. And I just really got that we needed 2 weeks. But because the weekend was an integration, those 10 days felt like the completion of a cycle for me.
Of a cycle.
And they love it. Yeah, it's a full cycle.
So
Yeah.
10 days makes a cycle. Okay, that's interesting. Well, what does it mean for you, Jules? I mean, why is this such an? I know this is a strange thing, but I'm really hung on that number. That number seems very important to me.
Well, I think, what we've talked about a little bit, but we're creatures of habit. And so to be in a practice of something, in our own experience, sometimes it takes a few days to get into it, or you get into it and then you hit this point where you're like, I got enough, or, and then usually our pattern would suggest that we hit the eject button, I got it, I got this, I'm done, whatever. But when you stay a little bit past that predictable point of where you would stop, that's where the new emerges. That's where that unknown, the way you get to discover yourself in a different way, that's that sweet spot. And I usually find that around day 8, day 9, maybe day 7, when you're like, come on, that when you stay, if you choose to commit to yourself and stay, that's really when you unlock the sweet spot. And that's when new things emerge. And I think being able to be in the consistent practice, not only allows you to develop new routine, new habit, just new way of being, but then come by day 7, 8, or 9, when you've been doing that for that period of time, that's when you start seeing results. That's like just the bonus round. That's like the victory lap, ×1, ×2, ×3, like do it again. And that's when you get to know yourself in a way you're like, whoa, all I have to do is press this button and I get the gumball, press the button, I get the gumball every single time. Then that's that reinforcement that gives us the ability to be like, this is cool. And that's, I think, where real reality creation and play gets to come into focus.
Yeah, that now you are really touching on right now what it was that I was sensing. I couldn't put it into words, but you just did it very nicely. There's the aspect of when you do something and you commit to doing something. First of all, how long are these programs each day? Let's get a little time frame here. So how much time are we spending each day?
Up to about an hour or so a day. So
an hour a day.
Okay. Yeah, an hour a day.
Okay, so that's something anybody can commit to. That's not a tough commitment. We're not talking like an 8-hour day. This is, you can fit it into your schedule. It's very doable. Okay, so what happens when we do any kind of a program? I mean, how often we hear about doing affirmations for 30 days or something like that. What happens, of course, is that when we actually do it, the first few days may not actually feel great, but after about it could be a different number for every person. After a couple of days, after 3, 4, 5, 6 days, all of a sudden you start to feel better about it. You start to think about it a little bit differently. You think about yourself differently. You think about your experiences differently. You're looking at the world from a different perspective just because you've been doing this thing, this one consistent thing that's different from what you've been doing up until that point in time. And if you keep going with it, then the shifts start to happen, that some of which you hoped for and some of which you didn't expect. And that provides fuel as well, doesn't it? I mean, the whole thing, it becomes a momentum generating machine just by continuing the pattern throughout 10 days. I think that's what I was thinking was happening when I heard 10 days. It's like, okay, by day 2, you're feeling it. By day 3, you're really feeling it. By day 4, all of a sudden, it's like the world is shifting. That's the kind of thing I was imagining when I heard the 10-day pattern.
It's cumulative for sure. And it's an opportunity to explore discipline. Spiritual, ritual, and discipline. And you know how that feels when you're on a good track with a mindful eating program or a workout program. You move through your life differently. You rebuild a trust in yourself. You build a leadership in yourself. And so much gets developed like that in the Dare to Prosper Challenge, to choose 10 days and to fulfill on 10 days and to put your best effort in, because this is really a journey with yourself. This is a journey to unlock your potential, your prosperity potential. Then to complete that is such a win. It's such a serotonin, dopamine response. Be like, I completed this. I signed up for something. I committed to it and I completed it. And it's an opportunity for you to explore yourself as a winner.
That's a great thing to do, to explore yourself as a winner. How often do we think about ourselves that way? Yeah, that's a big deal. I'm going to give you each like 30 seconds more to do the little last minute promo for those who are kind of on the edge. They aren't quite ready to sign up like Kathy and Susie and others were doing there. But what's the one thing you can say, Jules, that actually says, okay, this person's going to actually make the press and push the button and do it. Just do it.
Just claim it. Just do it.
Claim it.
Legitimately. New browser, thedaretoprosperchallenge.com. Name, email, submit. It's just claim it. And sometimes that's what it takes. That's the difference between what I have and what I want. The choice in the moment, real time. And this is that moment, real time. And if you've been waiting, this is your confirmation. So give yourself that gift. Claim it. Do it.
She got like 80% of Jolie, but you got to get the other 20%. What's the last thing you can say to get that last 20%?
I just want you to know how worthy you are of having it, of feeling your capacity to receive abundance expand, to create a new future for yourself, for your life, for your family, for your community, for the world, because we need all hands on deck right now. And this is such an opportunity for you to claim what is yours, the prosperity that is yours. There's so much wealth on this planet. There's so much being generated right now. To know that you are deserving, to know that you are worthy, to expand, to receive, to claim what is yours, this is your chance.
Beautiful, ladies. Jolie Dawn, Jules Schroeder, thank you so much for spending this time. We really appreciate it. Best of luck with the DareToProsperChallenge.com. We'll be looking forward to hearing a report. Thank you especially to all of our podcast listeners without whom we would not have a podcast. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.